We forget that things were not always the same way they are now. Wherever we are now, whatever we have, sometimes seems like that's all there is. But everything began somewhere. Our world has become a cacophony of noise and confusion. It is easy to forget from where we came. My name is Manuel C. Cruz, professor of theater arts. I have personally seen higher education devalue the arts, moving to professional business and technical education. Now, there's nothing wrong with these pathways, but we forget the value of the arts in our lives. Theater is important to our social and emotional learning. Theater can help people develop empathy, respect for others, and the ability to communicate effectively. It can also help people learn to behave in social situations. Theater helps build community. Theater brings people together in a shared space to experience something moving, funny, or thought-provoking. Theater is important to our sense of history. Theater can help people connect with history by making it come alive on stage. Theater can help with our creativity. It helps people tap into their own personal creativity, no matter what your profession is, and helps us understand the world. Theater can help people explore the world from different perspectives and understand people from other cultures. It can also help our academic achievement. Studies have suggested that students who are exposed to theater, music, and dance are more proficient in reading, writing, and math. Now, we've talked about how theater is a collaborative art. It is both temporal and spatial, but it also borrows from the literary arts as well. And the basis of all theater is the script. So today we're going to talk about creating dramatic script. The playwright, or the screenwriter, or even the writer of a novel provides the blueprint or plan for a production. The playwright chooses the story to be told, selects the dramatic episodes including their order, and writes the dialogue for the characters to speak. Now, for the purposes of our discussion, we're going to discuss the playwriting process, but the process applies to screenplays and novels alike. Now, the writer must select the specific subject of the play. The subject matter for drama is always human existence. The playwright must determine what aspect of human existence to write about. Now, a caveat, what about writing for animation? A lot of the characters are non-human. Well, if you're going to write about the life of, say, a flower, you have to anthropomorphize the flower. Now, anthropomorphism is the attribution of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non-human entities. It's considered to be an innate tendency of human psychology. It is a way for humans to relate to a non-human character. Now, once the writer decides on what aspect of human existence they're going to write about, they need to move on to the next step, determining focus. You need to decide whom and what to focus on. Now, the writer, if they're retelling a story or restorying, they must determine how to interpret the characters and organize the events of an existing story. Otherwise, the writer needs to let us know whom the play is about and how we are to view the characters favorably or unfavorably. Now, the writer has to establish purpose of the story. The purpose may be casual or unconscious, or it could be conscious and deliberate. The writer has to decide. Now, different purposes could be to entertain, to impart information, or to teach, to probe the human condition, what it is to be human, or to provide an escape, just pure fantasy. To serve a socio-political purpose is another reason someone may write a story. Then again, the story may serve multiple purposes, to teach and entertain, to entertain, and to serve a socio-political purpose. The writer must decide which one they want to do. The writer must now develop some sort of dramatic structure. Every work of art has some type of structure. Now, the structure of a play or a screenplay or a novel is analogous to that of a building. The story must be built brick by brick. When does the action begin? How are the scenes put together? How does the action unfold? Now, the essentials of dramatic structure are that the story must be turned into a plot. The plot involves the action. The plot includes conflict. It is the most important component of dramatic script. If you write something that doesn't have some sort of conflict, then it's not very interesting. In the human psyche, we are drawn in by conflict, by dissension, discourse, any argument. This is the reason I say conflict is the most important component of dramatic script. The characters are strongly opposed to each other. A reasonable balance is struck between the opposing forces, and that is what draws us into the story. What the problem is, how to solve it, what's the resolution. Now, once that's established, we can begin to structure our drama. It starts with an opening scene. The opening scene starts the action and sets the tone and style of the play. It also provides the character with a problem or an imbalance of forces. Obstacles and complications block a character's path. What does the character want? Why can't they get it? And what will happen if they don't get it? Now, these obstacles create a crisis for the character to live through. And the crisis starts to build and build and build upon itself until it reaches a climax, the moment in which nothing can get any worse. Now, after this climax has been achieved, we reach the point of the denouement, which is a fancy French word for the unknotting, the resolution of all problems after the climax of the narrative. This is the structure of storytelling: beginning, middle, and ending. Now, this is the point at which my students usually ask the question, why do I need to know how to structure a story? Well, I'll tell you. At some point in your life, you're going to go for a job interview. And I'm not talking about an audition for a play. I'm talking about an office job or a job at McDonald's or whatever. During this interview process, you will probably be asked what is called a Proust question. The Proust question is a way of probing a person's ability to communicate, to be able to organize their thoughts and speak them out loud. One of the Proust questions would be, what is your favorite color? And if your answer is blue, then you haven't really shown the interviewer an ability to tell a story. A story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't have to be a long story in an interview, but it has to be a story nonetheless. So, whenever I am asked that Proust question, what is your favorite color? I will tell them my favorite color is blue, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was a boy, back in the 1970s, there was something called the bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the United States as a nation, and we were all very patriotic, so we all wore red, white, and blue. Back in the 70s, one of the things that we liked to wear was blue jeans. And so I wore a lot of blue jeans, and eventually the color blue made its way into my color palette. So it became my favorite color. Therefore, my favorite color is blue. Now, this is an example of the first of two basic forms of structure, the climactic plot construction, or the Freytag pyramid. It was first used in the 5th century BCE in Greece. In the 19th century, a German playwright, Gustav Freytag, would label this pyramid. The plot begins late in the story. The scenes, locales, and characters are restricted, and the construction is very tight, beginning, middle, and end. Now, during the Renaissance in England and Spain, we start to see an episodic plot construction. This is where people, places, and events start to proliferate through the plot itself. There may be parallel plots or subplots. There is a juxtaposition of plots, and the overall effect is cumulative. All these plots, all these subplots, all these parallel plots come to a climax and the denouement to the story. Now, there are other structures other than climactic or episodic. There is ritual as a structure. This example would be the Catholic Mass. This is a rite that has theatricality, that presents the scripture of the week, climaxing in the Eucharist, and the denouement is the sending of the parishioners out into the world to live the life of the Gospels. Another form would be pattern as a structure. This is where scene structures repeat, but they're not quite the same. An example would be the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, if those of you who are old enough to remember that, in which Bill Murray's character relives the same day over and over, but no 2 days are alike. Now, similarly, there is feminist and cyclic plot structure. I once did a play called Morphic Resonance by Catherine Berger, in which scenes were repeated, but they were presented in a parallel universe form in which the outcome of each scene came out differently, and they didn't really have any kind of closure. They required the audience to kind of fill in the gap as to where it was going. Unlike a melodrama, the audience is required to put some thought into what they're witnessing. Now, the final structure that we're going to talk about is a serial structure. This is a structure that you will see on television or streaming services when you see a dramatic series. It's a narrative that goes across several episodes, building up to a season climax. Sometimes it could be a limited series in which a story is told over 10, 20 episodes, or it could be a continuous series that is picked up from season to season. But the characteristics are that the narrative is continuous across the season, the character development, the characters experience growth during the season, and these characters are episodic. You will see them from episode to episode and become recognizable stock characters. And usually the ending of the series can be a cliffhanger leading to a new season. Now, there is one more structure I'd like to add, and this is one that was not taught when I was at university in my classical education, and that's the hero's journey. The hero's journey is based on Joseph Campbell's monomyth. Now, the monomyth is a common template for any story that involves a hero who goes on an adventure and in the end is victorious in a decisive crisis and comes home changed or transformed. Now, this structure is often represented in a cyclic or a clock form. At 12 o'clock, at the beginning of the story, is the status quo. The adventurer is living a normal life. He's taken the blue pill and is just being ordinary person. But then he takes that red pill. He's called to adventure at 1 o'clock. Someone comes and incites him to go out of his status quo. And at 2 o'clock, he receives some sort of assistant. It's a mentor or a guide, and it is also accompanied by 2 companions. Then at 3 o'clock, he departs the ordinary world into the special world in which he goes through trial at 4 o'clock, most of which he will fail at, and he will learn from them. And as he approaches that final crisis, he learns from his mistakes, and he is victorious over evil. Now we're at the 7 o'clock hour. Afterward, he comes home with a treasure, often with knowledge or something that will affect his life, and as a result, he will return to the status quo, a changed person, and he will move forward until again he's called into action. Now, what I have just described for you is every melodrama that you've ever seen: Jaws, Star Wars, all the Marvel movies. The heroes are called into action, and they come back at the end triumphant. Good wins over evil, and they are changed people. Now, I know I've been using the pronoun he, but in the 21st century, cinema, theater, even this old dog, is embracing the sacred feminine, that strong female hero, the one inseparable from nature, the one who is nurturing as well and is the yin to the masculine yang. In the Western culture, yin and yang have been viewed as light versus dark. But in Eastern culture, the yin and the yang are the balance between male and female. And it is that sacred feminine that brings balance back to the world. By awakening this sacred feminine, we can heal the world. And in a sense, female characters make better heroes. So it's here that we will segue into types of dramatic characters in dramatic script. Let's start off with the original dramatic character, and that is the extraordinary character or the extraordinary character. These are the heroes and heroines that are larger than life, and in ancient Greek and Roman theater, they were the gods, or they were nobility, or generals, anyone who is high-born. And the reason for that is because they will have some fatal flaw that will lead to their downfall. Twice the pride, double the fall. Tragic end. And the reason it's a tragic end is because these extraordinary characters present some form of extreme human behavior, either the worst behavior or the best behavior. That's why when they fall, they fall. So for centuries, the heroes were all these extraordinary people. But by the 18th century, with the rise of democracy, we start to see heroes who are everyday people. They're not representative of human behavior. They are human behavior. They're the actual human behavior that everyday people can relate to when they go to the theater. Now, there are representative or quintessential characters. These are three-dimensional, highly individual, but they're also ordinary people, and they embody the characteristics of an entire group of people, not just an individual. Then you have your stock characters, which we spoke about in a previous episode. Recognizable characters that are episodic, and you could stick them into just about any story. They appear particularly in comedy and melodrama. Characters with a dominant trait. Now, these are closely related to stock characters. One aspect of their character dominates, making for an unbalanced and often comic personality. Usually the bumbling fool who can do nothing else. Now we have the minor characters. Now, these play small parts in the overall action. They appear briefly and they serve to further the story or to support more important characters. They're kind of a glue, a filler. A character that goes back to the origins of Western theater is the narrator or chorus. Now, generally, a narrator speaks directly to the audience and comments on the action. In Greek drama, the action would be commented on by the chorus using song and dance. Finally, there are non-human characters. By anthropomorphizing certain animals, we can portray certain traits of human beings, such as stubborn people being stubborn like mules, elephants who never forget, that sort of thing. Juxtaposition of characters can compare and contrast the different types of characters that the writer uses. such as the protagonist, the leading character or the chief or outstanding figure in action, the good guy, or the antagonist, the character who opposes the protagonist, the bad guy. And both the antagonist and the protagonist have minor characters at their side that are foils, someone that they bounce off their personalities and bounce back. Now, the last thing I want to mention is not so much a structure, but a theatrical device. It's a device that's been used since the ancient Greeks. It's called the Deus Ex Machina. This is a resolution device that uses divine intervention at the last moment to save the action from its logical conclusion. Its arbitrary and coincidental solutions are used in modern drama. Now, the Deus Ex Machina is a way to solve conflicts in the plot by means of an outside character or elements that hasn't appeared in the story and has nothing to do with the internal logic of the storyline. In other words, sometimes it's a way to get out of a problem when you're writing. Now, the Deus Ex Machina actually describes the actual machan or the machine that used to drop a statue of a god or an actor playing a god down from above to indicate that this is divine intervention. And it is used a lot in cinema. So anytime that your hero is in trouble and there's no way that they could get out of it, and somehow by a miracle they are saved and able to fight on another day, that is Deus Ex Machina. And it can be used more than once in a film, and often is. I'm Manuel Cruz. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell for future episodes. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit our Patreon page by clicking the link below.